Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Father Acharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Father Acharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Well, I'm not sure. Is it text 34? Trying to recall. I don't think we read that one. Yeah, we're on different kinds of determination.
So the bookmark is on page 682, 683?
Yeah, 682, 683. Or maybe we read 34, 35, and we're about to read 36 different kinds of happiness. No, we didn't read 35 for sure. I would have remembered the purport. All right, we can read 30. Yeah, let's do 34. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this third day of July, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 18, text 34, at the top of page 682. Yaya tu dharmakamartan dritya daryate Arjuna pasangena palakankshi driti sa partarajasi yaya tu dharma kamartan dritya daryate Arjuna pasangena palakankshi Diti sa partarajasi Yayat dharma kamartan Dritya daryate Arjuna Pasangena palakankshi Diti sa partarajasi Yayat dharma kamartan Dritya daryate Arjuna Pasangena palakankshi Duti sa partarajasi. Go ahead, Prakash. Yata tu dharma karmartan Dritya daryate Arjuna Pasangena palakankshi Kriti saparta rajasi. 1 second. Page 682. Go ahead. Yayat dharma kamartan Dritya dharyate Arjuna Pasangena palakankshi Dviti sa partarajasi. Word by words. Yaya, by which, to, but, dharma, religiosity, kama, sense gratification, artan, and economic development, dritya, by determination, dharyate, one sustains, Arjuna, O Arjun, prasangena, because of attachment, pala akankshi, desiring fruitive results, dritihi, determination, sa, that, parta, O son of Pita, rajasi, in the mode of passion. But that determination by which one holds fast to fruitive results in religion, economic development, and sense gratification is of the nature of passion, O Arjun. Purport: any person who is always desirous of fruitive results in religious or economic activities, whose only desire is sense gratification, and whose mind, life, and senses are thus engaged, is in the mode of passion. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chukshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one thing that comes to mind is this idea of determination is one of the aspects that Rupa Goswami mentions in his Upadeshamrita are, if it's transcendental, is essential for advancement. Utsahan nishchayat dharyat. Dharyat is the same root as this driti. Utsahan nishchayat dharyat tattat karma pavartanat sangatyagat sato vritte shadbhi bhakti prasidyati. So enthusiasm, determination, and patience is speaking of determination here. Utsahan nishchayat dharyat. I think dharyat there means patience, and nishchayat means determination. And in the matter of what? Tattat karma pavartanat, in the matter of performing all of the activities necessary in devotional service. Sangatyagat, giving up bad association, and sato vritte, following in the footsteps of advanced devotees. These 6 things are very conducive to advancement in devotional service. So here we see the another verse that came to mind from Bhagavad Gita is the 2nd chapter. How does one get vyavasayatmaka buddhi? Vyavasayatmaka buddhi is another description of intelligence fixed in devotional service. And Prabhupada took great inspiration from the commentary of that by Baladev Vidyabhushan, describing that this the most essential part of this is accepting the orders of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. And this is something Prabhupada showed by preaching in English in India, and finally coming to America. And he was very inspired by his spiritual master's instruction to take it abroad, and Lord Chaitanya's prediction that his name would be heard in every town and village. So this determination, now this other verse, Bhogaishwarya prasaktanam taya pridita chetasam vyavasayatmaka buddhi samato navadiyate. Here's those who don't attain that vyavasayatmaka buddhi, one-pointed fixed intelligence, and that is those who are too much attracted to bhoga and aishwarya, wealth and enjoyment that it buys. Prasaktanam, very attached. Prasaktanam taya apirita chetasam, and whose consciousness is kind of stolen away by that, is taken. Just like Krishna mentioned in the 7th chapter, kamasinandi apiti labo jivati avata. No. How does it go? Those whose intelligence is stolen away by various desires, they worship different demigods, if you know that word. Anyway, but the same idea is there. If you're too much attracted to sense gratification, then you can have determination in a path that recommends giving up sense gratification. Your determination is for enjoyment, and that's the general principle of people in this, of living entities in this world. And so this is describing determination which holds fast to the fruit of results in religion, economic development, sense gratification, is of the nature of passion. And that keeps you bound up. It keeps you bound up to this world, because you're always dreaming and thinking of ways in which you can enjoy more and enjoy different varieties of sense gratification. And even if you achieve it, there's always the anxiety of it leaving, or you becoming, your circumstances change, so you can't enjoy it anymore. So it's of the nature of this flickering material illusory energy that has been drawing us on since time immemorial to try to enjoy her. So this is to gain determination in devotional service requires cultivating vairagya and the restraint of the senses. It directly goes against this determination in the mode of passion, which is what we're surrounded by, and it degrades to the mode of ignorance. Because it becomes so difficult to get that. You find yourself, you achieve it and then you lose it, and so you have to assuage your disappointment, so you get to drink something, or smoke something or whatever. And so you're in this cycle of aspiring and then failing and then depression, and then you're in the mode of ignorance. So instead of doing that, we can take our natural passionate mode and engage that in Krishna consciousness, meaning that, what is a kirtan, I remember we used to go out 3 hours a day, that was the part of the program, And then there was a morning and evening kirtan, which is also, dancing and chanting. And the natural, passionate energy of youth was transubstantiated, sublimated into dancing and chanting, which is the Yuga Dharma. So the energy is purified. And then your whole consciousness changes. Because you've experienced that in relation to Krishna, he's acted from within. And so when the quiet time, you're not engaged in so many things, then you engage it towards study or this or that, or doing the pots, while chanting Hare Krishna. I've told this story several times, but maybe not. I've been in this class for so long, probably none of you heard it. So back in the early 80s, when I was in Miami, I was working with other members of the BBT and producing the remainder of the 10th canto. Prabhupada translated through 13 chapters of the 10th canto. And that left 77 chapters of the 10th canto, and 31 or 32 in the 11th, and 13 in the 12th to finish. So I had the great fortune of being part of the team that helped finish those and produce those. So, so we had a couple of guys in the BBT crew. We had the manager and the indexer. He had been trained as an indexer, and one or two other guys. And so we had a crew of about 5, and our responsibility was do the pots on Sunday night after the feast, So that's kind of a drag, all day, you got to, okay, but then when we got into it, of course, it's Miami, we have our short pants and everything, and we were in the kitchen, and we'd have a kirtan going on. Sometimes I would leave, one of the other devotees would leave, and we had our natural pots and pans, with the percussion section. And after, an hour and a half of doing the pots and doing the kirtan, we were good, It wasn't that, oh boy, I had to do the pots. No, wow, yeah, nice kirtan. So that's Krishna consciousness. When you add Krishna consciousness and there's some surrender to there, then you get even more mercy from Krishna, and that means more attraction. The name is sweeter, you put in some effort, and so that's how you do it. Otherwise, it's, I just these pots for an hour and a half. Where's the pay? I didn't get any pay. So I'm looping, So Krishna consciousness helps us to take our natural energy, whatever it may be, physical, mental, and engage it in Krishna's service, and then it becomes a joy. The more difficult things actually become blissful, because you're feeling, expressing your actual devotion more sincerely. So that's the determination in the mode of goodness, or even transcendental determination. All right, and if there's no discussion, we'll go on to determination in the mode of ignorance. Yaya swapnam bhayam shokam vishadam madamevacha navimunchati durmedha dviti sa partha tamasi. And that determination, which cannot go beyond dreaming, fearfulness, lamentation, moroseness, and illusion, such unintelligent determination, O son of Prita, is in the mode of darkness. Purport: it should not be concluded that a person in the mode of goodness does not dream. Here, dream means too much sleep. Dreaming is always present, either in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. Dreaming is a natural occurrence. But those who cannot avoid oversleeping, who cannot avoid the pride of enjoying material objects, who are always dreaming of lording it over the material world, and whose life, mind, and senses are thus engaged, are considered to have determination in the mode of ignorance. So there's a lot of that in the present age. You have, big downsides to the internet and the immediate availability of knowing things everywhere, and also you expose yourself to all kinds of input that could be completely false, but you believe it. There's an epidemic of all these conspiracy theories and things like that, and people get and it breaks up families. Like the old guy is always watching the TV or checking out this site, and before you know it, he believes something that's completely off the wall, and he insists that this is and that the vaccines are poisoning people, and whatever, and it's broken up families and creates a lot of moroseness and a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, and that's the world we're living in. It's endemic out there. So how to avoid that? The main thing that, the foundation of this whole movement is the books, is the knowledge that's based on the Vedas, that's based on a source that's ultimately Krishna or God. And when we suspend our disbelief, because there's so many things that are quite amazing and aren't believable according to our material understanding, and we take in the knowledge and we try to live by it, then that forms a system of belief and a system of discourse that protects you against all of the craziness that's going on. It's always in the material world it's that way, but it seems in Kali Yuga it's accelerating. I mean, I just read an article, I keep up on the news, that there's a law they're signing in California that's finally going to be banning these poisonous chemicals like red dye number 3 or something that's been used in candies and things that's been proven carcinogenic. It's outlawed in Europe, so when the same companies sell their product in Europe or something, they don't use that dye. Why not do it here? To be in a business where this is like the cigarette business. I went through the whole thing in the early 60s when they finally got a law to put a message on there. Cigarette smoking can be hazardous to your health. Prabhupada refers to that as, this is a mode of ignorance. It says right there, it's hazardous to myself. Well, okay, let me light up, And after a while, you don't read it anymore. If there's anything like the mode of ignorance, ignoring what's right in your face, that's the mode, of ignorance. That's self-destructive. So this whole material world has a warning on it. Hello, forgetting Krishna is hazardous to your health. Getting too much involved in sense gratification is hazardous to your health, and you can actually see it. It's obvious. But oftentimes in this mode of ignorance means that you see but don't see. Pashyati na pashyati. There's this phrase in Sanskrit. I think the first use is in the second canto, where Sukadeva Goswami has this 3-verse description of material life and the dangers of it. That's so condensed and so cogent. So he's describing how in this material world you have a certain number of defenses. He calls them soldiers to help you. First one is your own body, it's a healthy body. So that's very important, And then, your family, your wife, and children, like that. And he doesn't mention it, but obviously your bank account and all these different things, But he calls them fallible soldiers. In other words, they inevitably fail, And so he says, Deha patta kalatradi shatma saineshva sattvapi tesham pamatto nidanam pashyan apina pashyati. Although seeing, you don't really see. It doesn't. The first one is the body, the wife, family. All these fallible souls. Tesham pramatto nidanam. You've seen, your grandfather or other people's. They've all died or become unable to help, and yet you don't see. It doesn't register on you that this is not your shelter. This is not secure. I need to find another shelter. And the ultimate shelter is Krishna, is God. Who can be a greater shelter than that? But if you don't believe in that, then you try to do some material thing. So even though seeing, it doesn't register, and you keep placing your faith in these fallible soldiers. And that includes, obviously your own body and everything like that, as he mentions. So that's grand illusion. That's what material life is trying to enjoy that which is ultimately a source of misery. We've got our fixed translation now. Yehi sangsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. Adyantabantang konteya nateshu ramate buddha. Do we want to be Buddha, intelligent, or not? So these intelligent persons do not take part in the pleasures that are due to the contact of the senses with the sense objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the sources of misery and have a beginning and an end, and therefore the wise do not delight in them. Simple. You know? Hare Krishna, welcome. We are on page 682 of the Bhagavad Gita. You're welcome to come and join us. So but determination to try to enjoy those pleasures, which is what material life is all about, is clearly self-defeating, right? Because ultimately it produces misery. If nothing else, it brings you back to this world of birth and death, which is the greatest misery. And so, how to enjoy? We're enjoying living beings. Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness. That can give a pleasure that is not dependent on the contact of the senses with the sense objects. It's really dependent on your consciousness, your remembrance of Krishna, and you're trying to serve Him with whatever facility you have. We've had several devotees. I've been at the bedside. I've been here so long, you know. And I have a little facility with kirtan and everything, so I've been at the bedside of more than a half a dozen devotees who passed away. And that's the most auspicious thing, is to be surrounded by devotees chanting Hare Krishna very sincerely, you know. And you're lying there and you're hearing, because the sense of I remember this one lady used to come when I first started these classes in the early 80s. And I think she came around a little later. But she would come, Bhakti and Phyllis, who eventually got initiated, Padmavati. And she had joined late in life, meaning 45, I don't know if she was 50, you know. But she had been a smoker since she was a teenager. She'd been smoking cigarettes, you know. So she gave it up when she joined, but it had an effect. She already had COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is common in smokers after years and years. It's a heavy smoker. All right, so she had to deal with that, you know, and periodically we wouldn't see her for a while. And then eventually she started coming. She had to drag a little oxygen canister, and she'd be right here. And she went into the hospital a couple of times. Then I got a call. I remember it was 2011 in January sometime. And it was the Kadashi. And she called me and says, I think this is it. You know, I'm going to the hospital. I can't breathe very well. So I went over there. She was in the room, and I was with Rajendanandana. Rajendanandana would always, if he's in town, he would always be there. He was there for Radhanath Das. It was another wonderful departure. So it was a whole, you know, we immediately started chanting Hare Krishna. She's lying on the bed and we're chanting Hare Krishna. And who walks in, bud? You remember, Brajabadu. You don't remember Brajabadu? Anyway, she was here for 40 years. She joined here, and she was elderly. She at that time she was about 95, 96 years old. Brajabadu, yeah. And Ladli was taking care of her. And periodically she would go into an assisted living, then she'd come out like that. So she showed up with Ladli to chant at the bedside of Padmavati. So it was such a, you know, dramatic scene, and we're chanting away. Then Brajabadu didn't feel so well, so she had to leave, so just me and Rajendranan. Then Padmavati's children came. Children means 40, 45 years old, you know. And they were scattered in America. She had a couple of sons and a daughter who had flown in from different parts of the country. And so we were chanting Hare, and it's almost like a disappearance tune, which is the first tune. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. But the children came in, I say adult children, and said, okay, we're going to, you know, let her pass now, pull the plug, so to speak. She didn't use those words. And we'd like to be alone with her. We said, well, it would be really important, you know, for her if we would chant. She said, no, we want to do it alone. What are you going to say? So we went to a little waiting room just a few doors down. We were sitting there for about 15 minutes. Then one of the sons comes in. He says, you better come back. You know, she's not leaving. She's struggling to breathe, but she's staying with it, you know. So we came back in, we chanted, and 3 minutes she was gone. She was just waiting for us to come, you know. So you know, it sounds a little gruesome, but that's an auspicious way. There's nothing more auspicious than to leave the body with devotees chanting around you to help you remember Krishna. And I've been at several, you know, very dramatic scenes of that. So what else can you do? There comes a point where there's no more mitigation, you know, and your consciousness is dependent on others, really. I mean, of course, your own practice, you're trying to remember, but it helps to have as much chanting going on. Prabhupada had that. He asked us to chant, you know, that was all he needed, all he wanted. So that's successful life, you know. Otherwise, if you die, you know, with all these unfulfilled desires, plus all of these grudges that you still have, you know, you can imagine. You're coming back, and who knows, you may not come back as a human being. So that's what we're talking about here. To be determined in the mode of goodness or transcendental determination, to stay on the path of Krishna consciousness and to, you know, introspect and gradually improve. Okay, so the mode of ignorance is just the opposite of that. Unintelligent determination, morose, lamenting, dreaming, fearfulness. We don't want that. Now, different kinds of happiness. 36. Sukham tvadinam trividham. I'm sorry, let me say that. Sukham tvidanim trividham. Shunume bharatarshabha. Abhyasad ramati yatra. I'm sorry, I should have said Dukkantam chanagacchati. O best of the Bhartas, now please hear from me about the three kinds of happiness by which the conditioned soul enjoys and by which he sometimes comes to the end of all distress. Purport. A conditioned soul tries to enjoy material happiness again and again. Thus he chews the chewed. But sometimes in the course of such enjoyment, he becomes relieved from material entanglement by association with a great soul. In other words, a conditioned soul is always engaged in some type of sense gratification. But when he understands by good association that it is only a repetition of the same thing, and he is awakened to his real Krishna consciousness, he is sometimes relieved from such repetitive so-called happiness. So ultimately it all boils down to this. How are we going to try to enjoy in this world? If we have no knowledge of Krishna consciousness, inevitably we'll be pushed by the senses and the conditioned mind to try to enjoy sense pleasure. And as Krishna said, that leads to suffering, nothing but suffering. So, here, Prabhupada, he invokes a verse, a famous verse, this chewing the chewed. So this is Prahlad Maharaj. It's instructive. There's 3 verses. He's speaking to his father, as he always did. Just imagine the scene, you know, for a minute. Here's his powerful demonic father, who in the backstory is a devotee of Krishna, right? He's Jaya Vijay, but now he's in his first demonic birth. So he's thoroughly in the demon's mode of trying to be God and try to enjoy it and so forth. And he has his son, who is, I don't know, I guess it says of his eldest son, he seems to be his main son, who he wants to train up to take over, you know, be a nice demon. But he's not a demon. He's a pure devotee. He's one of the Mahajans. But he's a little fragile little boy, and here's this monstrous demon who's so powerful that all the demigods are bowing down to him, except Shiva, Brahma, and of course Vishnu. Even Narada Muni said, yeah, I had to bow down because he's so powerful. And so what is this? He consistently preaches Krishna consciousness to him, which is the last thing he wants to hear. First, you know what I mean? Last thing he wants to hear. So this is an exchange, very famous, where his father wants to know, well, where do you get your power from? You know? Same place you do, Father. From God, you know. But you don't have to worry, he says. Matirna Krishne padatak svatova mitobi padjeti grihapatanam. Adandago bhevishatam tamisram punak punascharvidacharvananam. That's the chewing the chewed, probably refers to you. He says, for someone who is grihapatanam, who's taken more or less a vow to try to enjoy materialistic family life, And therefore, his senses are uncontrolled, Adanta Gobhir. He enters further and further into darkness, Vishtam to Visram. Why? Punak Punash Charvita Charvananam. Because he's trying to enjoy that which has already been enjoyed before, a million times by conditioned souls, and it's always led to more and more entanglement and misery. So whether it's sex life or lording it over or the million different things you can try to enjoy today, it's all been enjoyed before, and you're not going to get a place where you're perfectly blissful and happy. Because you're always afraid I'm going to lose it, or time will take it away, or like that. So, now why is this? The next verse is even more famous. Nate vidu, te, the previous verse, they who are entangled completely in material life. Nate vidu svartakatimi vishnum, durashayaye bahirartamanina, andayatanda rupaniyamana tebi shatantra mudodamni baddha. Very important verse. They who are so entangled, 99.99% of people, they don't know that their real sva-arta means the goal of the soul, their actual goal in life is Vishnu, Krishna. Svartakatim hi Vishnu, the goal of their efforts is Vishnu. And therefore they're absorbed in external things. Durashaya, never to be achieved hopes and aspirations, to be perfectly happy and peaceful in this world. It's not going to happen. It's a material world. And therefore, bahirartamanina, their mind is always absorbed in external material goals. And they're encouraged in this by other blind people. Andayatanda, beginning with your materialistic parents and the education and all of the advertising and Facebook and everything else. Everything is influencing you to keep doing that. And what's the result? Tepi shatantram udodamni baddha. Everybody, and this remains completely tightly bound by the three modes of material nature, the ropes, of illusion. Andayatanda. So what's the solution? He gives it in the third verse. Of course, it's the last thing Hiranyakashipu wanted to hear, but we want to hear it. Naisham matistava rurukamanging spishitjanata apakamo hirarta mahiyasam pararajobhishekam nishkinchananam nabanite yavat. Now he employs in this verse this yavat tavat pair. Just like we have this yata tata, how you draw an analogy. Dehinosmin yata dehe komadam yovana tata dehantarapaptir. Just as the soul, even in this body, you can, if you're ready to introspect a little bit, yeah, I've been transcribing. My body's been changing since I remember. And I'm the same person. So what's the same? Oh, that's the soul. And similarly, it goes into another body at death. So yavat tavat is another pair, which is not thus as similarly, but rather, as long as you don't do this, you won't get that. That's usually how it's phrased. Yavat tavat. So naitan, as long as you don't, smear yourself with the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee. Naitan matis tavarurukamang green, spishati yanarta pagamo yarad. You will not be able to place your mind to touch with your consciousness, which is what spishati, the lotus feet of Krishna, which you won't be able to achieve that goal, which will allow you to achieve the perfect goal of going back to Godhead. As long as you do not smear yourself with the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee. In other words, until you surrender, until you admit, I don't know what's best for myself, I'm in trouble. Let me find some good instruction. And it's perfectly embodied and exemplified by Arjuna. The Bhagavad Gita is giving us. The first chapter, you remember, he's confronted with this impossible situation of having to fight and kill his beloved grandfather figure, Bhishma Dev, and teacher, and all kinds of friends and relatives on the other side. Now he sees, Krishna, take my chariot between the two armies, so I can see those who have come here wanting to fight and who are ready to fight me. So he goes there, and there on the other side, he sees all his relatives, friends, and his beloved guru and grandfather. And of course, there's plenty on his own side. So now he's going to start this war and engage in it. And it's just, so suppose I win the battle. I'll have this kingdom that'll be soaked with the blood of the people I love. So who cares? I don't care. Let me go. I'm going to drop. He drops his bow and wants to go out to the forest. But he knows that's not going to be any good because Krishna will be displeased. And so he just sits down on the chariot and is paralyzed. Until he approaches Krishna in a different mood. He's not arguing with anymore, friend to friend. And Krishna's not responding to him. The first thing Krishna says, how has this weakness come upon you? This impotence. Give it up. Uttishtata. Jagata papa varana bodhita. And fight in the battle. It doesn't become you. Everyone's going to criticize you. You may leave the battlefield because you feel compassion, but they'll say because you're a coward. What could be more painful for you? That could be any chariot driver saying that. Really, that's what they do. But when he surrenders as his guru, then Krishna chastises him as a guru. You're speaking like a great pundit, but you're not a pundit. You're lamenting for what is not worthy of grief, the physical body. And then he has 20 verses and lessons on the nature of the soul. So that's what one has to do. One has to find someone who you trust and question. Remember, there's a formula in chapter 4. Tadvidi paripatena pariprashnena sevya upadikshantite jnanam jnanina sattvajarja. It's the jnana. It's the knowledge, and you have to prepare the heart to receive the knowledge. So if you want to understand the truths of Krishna consciousness, which are very mysterious and esoteric, then you have to approach upadikshantite jnana tattvadarshi, someone who's seen. In other words, an advanced devotee, acharya, who's seen the truth and can speak with authority. And that's what Prabhupada was able to do, to come to America and found those who are willing to hear. He gave them the experience with the chanting. There was something going on there, and it piqued their interest. They were ready to read, but there wasn't much to read. It was that one book, but they were ready to hear. And he was able to find, enough devotees to surrender. So the movement, planting the seed, that second volume, it's now in the 6th volume set of the Lilamrita, showed that the Prabhupada's success because he surrendered to his own spiritual master, Rupa Goswami. He had a vision of Rupa Goswami sitting when he was in Radha Damodar temple. He said, just write the books, everything will be taken care of. It's a wonderful story. So we also can achieve that. But we have to be willing to change our whole orientation to what we consider important. And this idea of as Prabhupada mentions here, happiness, he tries to enjoy material, but sometimes it becomes relieved from material entanglement by association with the Great Soul. This is, the Sangha is everything. There's a Sadhu Sangashtaka in the 3rd canto. Beginning 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 20th verse. And he describes this prasanga. So there's sangha and there's prasanga. Now the prefix pra intensifies. So prasanga means intense, meaningful association, or association that's really going to change you. It can be good or bad. So the first use is bad. Prasangam jaram pashamatmana kabayo vidu sehesha sadhashakro mokshadvaram apavatam. I put it into a little poem. Mundane affection, because when you associate with something that's attractive, you get affection for it, you get attachment. Mundane affection keeps us tied to birth and death infernal, but love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. So that sincere association, willingness to hear and even to serve, but especially to hear, when we're fortunate enough that that's directed toward a devotee, especially a pure devotee, then that opens the doors to liberation. And then he goes on to describe who's the sadhu. So suppose you say, okay, great, where's the sadhu? Well, okay, here's what you look for. There's 3 verses. I'll just share. This is such a wonderful passage. So it's a famous verse. Titikshava karunika suridak sarvadehinam ajata shattavak shanta sadhavak sadhabhushana. Here are the ornaments of a sadhu. First is very tolerant. The last thing the materialist is tolerant. The more you're in the mode of ignorance, the more your ego is on a hair trigger. Someone looks askance at you and you're ready to fight him. All right? But the devotees tolerate so much, you have to come to the ashram. But merciful. Now, if you're going to try to spread Krishna consciousness, you have to have both. You have to be tolerant and you have to be compassionate. And Prabhupada was both in spades, But also those sincere. I mean, just Brigupati, Prabhu, I saw it. I just read the email. He sent out, Vijay sent out the World Sankirtan newsletter. He was the top distributor in the world last month, which is pretty far out. He's 72 years old. And he's been doing this for like 45 years, but he still goes out. Suridak Sarvadehinam, showing how he's the friend of all. You're the friend. You go on Harinam, you're also the friend of all. Anyone who hears, this. Suridak Sarvadehinam, Ajata Shatrabhak, you don't have any enmity to anyone. You don't consider anyone an enemy, although they may consider you an enemy. Because you're like Hiranyakashipu thought his son was an enemy to the point where he wanted to kill him himself. Then he was killed by Nrsingadev. Ajata and Shanta, peaceful. You don't have any material desires, not an anxiety of losing anything. You feel protected by the hands of Krishna. That's what Prahlad was. He was his perfect meditation. He's the ideal of that. And these are the bhushana, these are the sadhu bhushana, the ornaments. Now how do they get that way? Kapila Dev speaking, he's an incarnation of Krishna. He says, Mayananyena bhavena bhaktim kurvanti yedudham tapandi vivadastapan naitadman kata chetasa. Said, by undeviating devotion unto me, says Krishna, Kapila Dev, Lord Kapila Dev, bhaktim kurvanti yedudham, back to the determination, with very firm determination. And because of that, the ordinary miseries that would perturb so many people, they don't bother you so much. You're in a different space. Your mind is on Krishna. Naitanman kata chetasan, because the mind has come to me. So how do they enjoy? Now he's describing Marashya katamrishta shinbanti katayantita. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's the I mixed that up. Mayanane bhave bhaktim govindi ebadham matkatet the karmanas takta swajana bandhava. So then what's the evidence that they're one-pointed devotion unto me is that they're ready to give up any activity that they were attached to before. And they're even ready to break the bonds of family attachment and things like that, if that's necessary, if there are impediments. And how they enjoy is by always hearing and chanting the very sweet vibrations describing me. Manashya katamrishta shinbanti katayanti. It's hearing and chanting. And because of that, their minds are focused on me, and they don't feel the pains of this world very much. They're able to tolerate, So then he says, okay, mother, you should search out these souls and associate with them, because by their association you will be able to eradicate the bad effects of all your bad association from before. And then comes the key verse that is perfectly expands on the purport here of the association. It is a satam prasangan. The same word prasanga is used, but not in the negative sense of being very strong attachment to the material world like ropes, but rather a strong attachment to the sadhus. Satam prasangan mama virya sambhito bhavanti rit karna rasayana kata tadjoshanat ashu apavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishiti. The whole movement is based on this verse, basically. And what he says is a strong association, meaningful association with such devotees means hearing from them, basically. What are you going to hear? You're going to hear my glories. You're going to hear Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, all the things that Prabhupada translated. You'll hear that from realized souls. Mama virya samvido, and that vibration, bhavanti ritkana rasayanat, it acts like a life-giving elixir, pleasing to the heart and the mind. And the ear, Ritkana Rasayana Kata. And following this path, Tadjoshanad, Ashu, quickly, Apavarga Vartmani, the path of liberation, one strengthens his faith in Krishna, in the process of Krishna consciousness. Should. Shoes. Oh, no shoes. Yeah, just leave him outside. Yeah. So your faith is deepened, which is all important. And rati, your attraction to everything having to do with Krishna consciousness. And if you'll be so kind to come on this side, this is the men's side over here. Yeah. Shraddha, rati, and bhakti. Bhakti means pure bhakti, prema, is developed anukramishati, step by step. So that's what this is all about. This movement is association with the pure devotee. When we read the Bhagavad Gita, you can take a book. We're on page 683. I don't know if you have the same edition. No. If you want to use that one, text 1836. You'll see at the top of the gutter, you'll see, right. So, and the next verse, I'm not going to quote, there's 2 more verses to this Ashtaka, but he says, it's the easiest form of yoga. Just like you're doing it now. I mean, I'm babbling along, but when we read the verses of the purports, it's, you're getting association of Krishna and Krishna's pure devotee. You know, what could be more valuable than that? And if you take the instruction into your heart and you try to live by it, then your life is all auspicious. So that's how to achieve real happiness. Please hear, by happiness by which the conditioned soul enjoys it, by which he sometimes comes to the end of all distress. That's the happiness of Krishna consciousness, which is real, for real. Oh boy, we practically took up all the time. So, we'll have another class tomorrow. Only a few will be here. Those who are willing to, well, I'm not going to say renounce the kirtan. If you want to go on Harinam Kirtan at Imperial Beach, please do so. They'll be in there. But those who can't do that, and I know you're out there, I will be here even if I'm alone. I will pull this thing from the corner. Huh? What's going to happen to my constituency out there? Anyway. So we will continue, and he's going to describe the different kinds of happiness, which is, after all, what we're trying to achieve. You know, the goal is not ultimately liberation. That's a byproduct. But that's a good motivator at first, because, you know, relieving yourself from the horrendous miseries of birth, old age, and disease, disease and death is certainly a positive experience to strive for. But you'll find that in the process of Krishna consciousness, you're thinking less and less about liberation, and more about cultivating your taste for the holy name and learning wonderful nectar shlokas, which I want to share one with you right now. We still have time. There's a huge wealth in the Bhagavatam, in the CC, of, oh, I didn't bring it. Okay, but I think I know it by heart. Of beautiful expressions, the songs, the Bengali songs, which I never got into. They're wonderful, and Prabhupada, you know, has recordings of them, and we have. But just in the verses themselves. So this one is a prayer describing the Chataka bird. Chataka bird subsists on the rain that falls from a cloud. It's so picky that he won't even come down to drink the rain from a river or something. No, he wants the pure distilled water that comes from the cloud, you know. So the devotee here compares himself to the Chataka bird. Oh God, I forget the Sanskrit, but I'll give you the English. The Chataka subsists on rain it catches in midair. And so it's always praying to the cloud to send its fare. But though that cloud may send a thunderbolt instead of rain, that bird continues praying fervently despite the pain. Just like the Chataka, my mind is fixed upon one goal, and that is you, O Lord, most kind to every fallen soul. So whether it is punishment you send, or mercy sweet, I'll always pray to you for service to your lotus feet. Now there's a lot in there that could be expanded, but that's just one expression that we find in the vast corpus of literature that's been translated and is available. And I put a very small little tiny section of it into poetry, which I'm willing to share for free if you just send me an email, Dravida108, and at Gmail. Thank you. Shikshastika, you may be familiar with. Put that into, you know. Nadanang nasan, or Ainanda tanuja kinkadam katpaditam mam vishame bhavambodo kripayata vapada pankajastita dhuli sadashang vachindiya. Your servant for eternity, I lost my true identity and fell into this horrid sea of birth and death, O Lord. O Nanda's son, please hear my plea. By your sweet grace, consider me a speck of dust upon your lotus feet forevermore. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll have a kirtan in about 3 or 4 minutes, and you're welcome to join in. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.